Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. Racism, where the past meets the present. Now, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Now, I'm sure you are aware of the recent photos taken in the 1950s of a young Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys, at a angry white mob as it confronts six black, I believe it was six black males who were simply attempting to enroll in their school. Now you have to kind of remember the times that this was the height of Jim Crow, where segregation was legal. And of course, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum. And so the efforts to overthrow segregation was always met in the most violent way. In fact, this crowd, no doubt, uttered racial slurs, threats, and even violence could have happened. In other marches and protests, they were met with violence, oftentimes with bats, chains. I mean, being assaulted with verbal was light, in other words, but they were called the N-word. They were called every kind of racial slur. They were spit on, okay? Objects thrown at them. So now you have Jerry Jones, who was, again, 14 and 15 at the time. Basically, he's pictured here in this photo. And there he is with the, you can see the caption highlighted there. He's standing there. So the question becomes, why, right? There are a lot of questions, and my point, again, I'm just going to show how racism in the past meets up with racism in the present. Okay, so I'm not going to deal with whether or not, should he be boycotted, should he lose ownership of the Cowboys. I'm not here to deal with that, or even blacks who are defending him. I'm not going to deal with that per se. What is interesting, of course, is we can ask the question, well, so Jerry, why were you there? Now, in a response to LeBron James, Jerry said, I was just there out of curiosity. In other words, I just kind of showed up there out of curiosity. Now, I find that hard to believe. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. I find that hard to believe that he was just there for curiosity. In other words, he just kind of happened down the street and boom. But let's ask the question again. When you think about this, that, hey, Jerry, did your friends, or any of these people your friends, neighborhood people that you hung out with, did they say, hey, we're going to go down where these N-words are, attempting to get into school? Were you invited to the crowd? Or did you just happen to happen along and, man, oh, what's going on here? Well, there's some blacks trying to enroll into school. And he just stood back and watched. Now, if that's the case, then my question would be, how long did you stay when you heard the insults, racial slurs being hurled? Did you say, hey, this is not my bag, I'm leaving? In other words, were you a part of the crowd? Now, he claims he wasn't, right? So I can't dispute that. The picture's there in and of itself doesn't conclude that he participated in the racial animosity, in the racial slurs of the crowds that they hurled at there. My personal opinion, I find it extremely hard to believe that he wasn't a participant. Now, my point then would be simply in response to LeBron James, if he was. And again, I can't dispute his answers. So I have to, this is why I'm saying if and asking the questions. But his response to LeBron James was, I was just there as, out of curiosity. What were you curious about? Okay. But let's just say if you were there as a participant, my thing is, wouldn't it have been better to just simply say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I was there. I took part in that crowd. I uttered the N word. I made the threat. Whatever. I participated in that crowd, but I've grown from that. I think that would have been more honest. You see, and I think people, at least a lot of people, would have accepted that. I've accepted that from white people who have even shared with me. I live in the Chicago area, and Marquette Park was notorious during this time in the 60s. When people who grew up in Marquette Park, white people, and they said, you know what? I was raised to be racist, but I've grown from that. Now, again, I can't dispute it, but I also want to look at this, look at this crowd here, that if he says that he was, a part, if he was just there out of curiosity, did he attend maybe, look at the two different crowds, right? One is the King's I Have a Dream speech, and then the other one was a violent, hostile crowd. So if you attended that crowd out of curiosity, I'm only asking the question here, did you attend this crowd or a crowd like this? Just asking, right? Just asking. You see, when you think about all of these pictures here, and I'm going to get to the Charlottesville in a moment, but again, I can only ask. Now, people may say, well, he's not racist. After all, you remember this picture where he knelt with his football players over the Colin Kaepernick, kneeling and not standing for the flag. Remember, he also uttered a threat to them that none of them should kneel. My point is that these are indicators of a heart and a mind when you think about a person who came out of this timeline, in which he was raised this way, right? He was certainly around racists and racism. And I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that, okay, maybe he was just there as curious. I'm willing to. But back to this picture here. And that is where the past meets the present. Now, there are two ways I want to kind of approach that. The first way is here, excuse me, here is the past where he's involved in a racial mob. Now, just so we're clear, I want you to notice some of these crowds right here, Jerry included. Remember, Jerry would go on to own a football team, right? Billionaire in his own rank, person of power. And when people say, well, hey, he wasn't racist because, look, he had to hire football players. Well, keep this in mind during this time. And as he moved on, now think about this, from the 50s as he went into the 60s and the 70s. Remember, that was the time when they didn't hire black football players. During this time, they maintained that blacks were inferior, that blacks couldn't play as well as white football players. And more so, they were barred. They just would never even give them the chance. That's racism. As you get into the 80s and the 70s. I don't know exactly when he purchased the Cowboys. But as, of course, the evolution of all sports, it became illegal not to hire them. And more so, even as a business owner, you would have been stupid not to. Because if you said, I'm just going to hire all white players, you would have got creamed because the white players proved not to be as good as the black players. But racism, of course, still is maintained even in sports. For the longest, you never had black quarterbacks. And certainly, and we can ask this question now in Jerry Jones Corporation, when you get up into the management, upper management, how does the color flare out there? Are there people of color in the higher echelons of his corporation? Now, I don't know. I can only ask the question. Think about this crowd right here. In the past, some of them grew up to be hiring managers, police officers, business owners, judges, prosecutors, newscasters, right? And every level of society they grew up. How do you think what kind of mindset did they have? Did racism disappear? In other words, from these crowds of people, did they just disappear? Now, in some cases, without a doubt, they have. I've met plenty of white people who have said, I was that person. I would have been in that crowd. I was raised that way. But I outgrew it. But sadly, there are many people who have never outgrown that. And so then generationally, this is what we have in the present. The Charlottesville marchers, whom, of course, at the time, President Trump said, very fine people, right? On both sides, very fine people. Now think about that. These, in their 20s, in their 30s, hiring managers, business owners. Any one of them can get a job at Fox News in Newsmax. But think about this. Police officers, prosecutors, judge. Think about that. Racism, the past as it meets the future, the present. See? Now, what do you think about, look at that crowd right there. White supremacy has exploded 800% beginning during the time of Obama. Trump really ignited the blaze. And think about this. When you have President Trump, who has now even said that he wants to get rid of the Constitution. Now, with the aid of these people, and people who think like this crowd, how do you think that would turn out? If you can get rid of the Constitution, so what government would you institute? Who would be in control? These people? People like them? We've already had a taste of this, haven't we? What about these people? If that was to happen. And the fact that you have a former president suggesting it. Racism. Past meets the present. Now, here is, thank God, that our laws, thank God that our laws are in effect. But it's not to say that they're not trying. All right, guys, look, that is my perspective. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. See you in the next video.